It's your Wednesday daily delivery. I am Michael Rand. Glad to be back for another day. Hope you guys are having a good one out there as well. Really good show coming up. Tim Connelly, Timberwolves President of Basketball Operations, will join me here in just a few minutes to talk about the season so far, a stark contrast to last year. The Wolves right now 15-4, best record in the NBA. They have a game tonight against the Spurs. Spurs have, I think, one of the worst records in the NBA. Victor Wembanyama may not play, may play. Anthony Edwards may not play, may play. Both of them kind of nursing lingering injuries. But Wolves certainly will be in the driver's seat in that one no matter what. And we'll see how that goes. But yeah, Tim Connelly, a lot of good stuff to say, a lot of interesting insights into his process, what they went through last year, and how he was able to be patient in the face of a lot of us clamoring for change. Our hand raised right here. I was like, they got to do something. Something's got to change. It's not working. This roster doesn't make sense. And next thing you know, they are 15-4 and looking like one of the best teams in the NBA. So Tim Connelly, my guest on today's show. We will talk in just a few minutes. Got some Vikings thoughts towards the end of the show. We should find out some pretty good information today. Vikings back at it. We should know who their quarterback is after today, and we'll also find out kind of where they're headed as they get ready for the Raiders on Sunday. First, though, what did I miss? The Wild won again, 5-2 over Calgary. 4 wins in a row now since John Hynes took over for Dean Evison a little more than a week ago. And these aren't just like narrow, like, hey, they got a 2-1 win and, they got outshot. They got, saved by their goalie, or they got, a couple pucks just kind of bounced in and they got a win. These are solid, usually kind of start to finish, dominant performances. All of these wins have been by at least 2 goals. 3 of them have been by at least 3 goals. They are just flat out dominating their opponent right now. And you look at it and you say, well, obviously it's the coaching change, and it certainly is. They must be playing 50% better. They must be it looks like they're playing 100% better, because that's how bad they looked before this, and their 7-game losing streak that preceded Dean Evison being fired. And so it looks like a completely different team. My perspective, I'll share this in a minute. My perspective is a little bit different, but it does look like a completely different team, right? You've got Kirill Kaprizov is going again. He's got 2 goals, 3 assists in the 5 games since John Hynes took over. You've got the goaltending's been so much better. They've only given up what I think now it's 5 goals in the 4 games since he took over. The defense in front of goalies, Philip Gustafsson. Gustafsson's played 3 of the 4, including last night's win over the Flames. The defense in front of the goalies has been much better. They're playing faster. They're moving better. The penalty kill has been much better. They've only given up 1 power play goal in these 4 games. I believe their opponents are just 1 for 14 on the power play since John Hynes took over. That was a huge thing that was troubling them this season. Matt Boldy, 4 goals. He had 2 last night. 4 goals in 4 games after just 1 the entire season. That is a huge key to all this. In fact, let's hear John Hynes talking about Matt Boldy right now, what the difference is that he sees right now in his game.
He's playing faster. I think he's playing a strong skating game. I think he's making plays, in motion versus sometimes trying to stand still and then make plays. That's one. He's playing fast. I think he's that line has been good. I thought that line together tonight was really good. So it's nice to see Bolds get up and play the skating game that I think gives him the best chance to be a really good player.
So they got Boldy going. They're playing faster. The lower lines are producing. He had Connor Dewar with a hat trick the other day. Who saw that coming? So everything that wasn't going right earlier in the season, which was pretty much everything, is now going right. They are on a roll. They must be playing 50% better, like I said at the beginning. That's not how I see it. In pro sports at the highest levels, you don't have to get that much better to see a dramatic result. You can, if you're playing 10 or 15% better, if you're playing 10 or 15% faster, if you're playing 10 or 15% more focused. That is a massive difference, because these teams are looking for the slightest, smallest edges, right? They're looking for 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% maybe differences in face-offs won, in terms of saves, in terms of passes completed, things like that. They're looking for tiny little incremental progress, just little edges within the game. In football, in the NFL, difference in the game might be 2 or 3 plays out of over 100 in a game. In baseball, it might be 2 or 3 pitches out of 300 that change the entire game. If you're just that much better in those moments that determine games, that decide games, that can completely change your fortune around. So I think the Wild certainly look like a completely different team, but they're probably a lot closer to the team that we saw at the beginning of the year than we really know, because it's just those small differences that look like huge differences because of the small margin for error, because of the small margins that exist at the highest levels of sports. So I'm just kind of realizing this as you watch this team. It looks completely different. They're playing so much faster, so much better. The results are so much better. It's not that much of a difference, which is kind of the scary part, right? Like, they had this within them the whole time. If it took 100% better, I don't think you can get 100% better when you're already this good. You can't get 50% better all of a sudden when you're this good. All it is this small razor thin margin. And right now the Wild are on the right side of that. They've got something going, undeniable. They got something going. They're back into the playoff mix. The West is not great this season. Just 4 wins in basically a week takes them from feeling lousy about themselves to the point now where they're feeling better about their playoff chances, a lot of season left, feeling good about their game, things like that. John Hynes seems like he's got them going in the right direction. Seems like he understands this team already. So a lot of things to like about this team. But just think about this next time you watch them. Think about how they look completely different, but really it's just a tiny difference. It's 10, 15% maybe that is really taking them to another level right now. I think that same theory applies, by the way, to the Timberwolves. They were a good team at a lot of points last year. They struggled, but they had some success. Rudy Gobert certainly falls into that category where he was good last season, but maybe not the version of himself he wanted to be. You make small incremental changes. You get incrementally just a little bit better, 10, 15%, especially in the moments that matter most. Those 2 or 3 possessions at the end of the game that are much different this year than it felt like they were a year ago. All of those things add up to, instead of just kind of hovering around 500, all of a sudden you're 15-4. All of a sudden, your decisions look better. All of a sudden, it seems like you are on the right track instead of the wrong track. So that will kind of frame a lot of my discussion with Timberwolves President of Basketball Operations, Tim Connelly, and that is coming up right after the break.
Grand Casino would like to take a moment and salute the true football fan. The passion, the hope, the anticipation, that incomparable feeling of winning. Grand Casino would also like to take a moment to remind you that you can find all that anticipation, thrill, and winning at Grand Casino. Grand Casino, let your story begin.
Really happy to have Timberwolves President of Basketball Operations, Tim Connelly, on Daily Delivery today. Tim, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
You are welcome. Tim, 15-4 as of recording time right now, and that includes, I suppose, 14-2 in your last 16. Best record in the NBA as of recording time as well, because Boston lost the other night. You guys were tied for a little while there. I pitched this to you and the folks with the Wolves as a sort of early victory lap almost. Season's a long way to go, but do you feel you got to feel pretty good about the direction things are headed at this point?
Yeah, I think the guys doing a great job. Coach French is doing a great job. He got well-deserved Coach of the Month award. First time in a long time someone on our sidelines has gotten that. So it's fun to see all the hard work paying off. The building's been awesome. Our fans have been amazing. I don't think the 9-1 home record happens without the energy in our building. So, so far so good. We're only a quarter of the way through the season. We have some pretty lofty goals internally, but proud of how our guys have played this far.
This time last year, things were not quite flowing the way that maybe you wanted them to, or everybody wanted them to. There was criticism of the big trade that you made not too long after you got here, the Rudy Gobert trade. How did you kind of navigate last year and then kind of still feel like, hey, no, we got something going here. We don't necessarily need to disrupt things or anything like that. We just kind of need to build and kind of keep this foundation going and to kind of see to the point where you are right now?
We thought last year, we thought we left a lot on the table. Our record against sub 500 teams. I mean, it's simple. I think we were 6-10 versus the bottom 5 teams. You invert that record. We're a home court playoff team. We're at a playing game against LA. You have a pretty big lead in the fourth quarter, unable to close, and we see the world champion Nuggets in the first round, which is a tough match. So there was a lot of good last year. We didn't achieve what we wanted to achieve. I thought we counted ourselves pretty well in the playoffs, especially being down 3 of our top 7 guys once Kyle got hurt. This is an inexact industry. I knew we had a great coach. I knew we had a bunch of good players in the locker room, and we thought we had a chance to kind of right some of those wrongs. And thankfully, so far, we've had some success, and hopefully, we continue to build off that.
A lot of the off-season noise this year. I must have talked about it, wrote about it a million times. I mean, I don't know how much you pay attention to outside kind of perspectives and things like that, but like everyone's saying, didn't work last year, got to blow it up, got to do something new. How do you kind of filter that out? How do you kind of value the things you saw versus what you think things can be versus kind of, dynamics in the future and things like that to come to a point where you say, nope, let's keep this going, give this another chance this year because we thought we saw something there?
Well, you're always analyzing. You're always, I'm pretty aggressively self-reflective. So, it's again, inexact sport. So I certainly don't have all the answers. And when you think something's not working, you want to be ahead of it. But you also, I think there's a collective lack of patience in sports right now. It's
Guilty.
Not just,
I got my hand raised. You can see me. I get it.
It's not just sports. It's probably life. But, I was growing up, I was addicted to reading the newspapers. There was a morning and evening newspaper. And, my team was the Baltimore Orioles or Maryland basketball. So the Orioles went on a 3-7 streak, that there would be the well-deserved tough article. I think now if a team goes on a 3-for-7 streak in the fourth quarter, there's an article.
Right.
So the 24/7 nature of media, I think also, we all have the same access to all the same information, which I think is really cool, which makes, a really, it's neat where the fan base has the same stuff at their fingertips that we do. So I'm a pretty patient person. Sometimes I think that patience can bite me. So I don't want to be overly patient and asleep at the wheel, but we thought we saw a lot more good than bad last year. While we're always looking to improve the roster, and really there's no concept that you shouldn't avoid talking about. We thought that maybe there is something there. I don't think there's enough credit given to Cat last year, not just coming back from a really tough calf injury, but he had a great summer. Then he gets sick, so he comes into the season down like 30 pounds. So I never thought he was himself, and he's such an elite player. The natural maturation of guys like Jaden and Anthony, and then I think we saw pretty quickly the impact that Mike had on this roster, both on the court, in the locker room, and quite frankly in the community. So, too oftentimes I'm overly patient, overly optimistic, and I got to check myself in that regard. But I think patience, if you have the ability to be patient, I think is oftentimes is rewarded in this sports landscape.
Did the criticism bother you last year?
Not really. I don't read anything. It's Hoop Site is the only thing I see. I don't have any social media.
Okay.
Not even any ghost accounts. It's an industry that I signed up for. I think criticism is part of the job. I think, they're not, as long as we has a term that I use quite often. I think my colleagues are saying, inform mistakes, work really, really hard and try your best. And it sounds corny and cheesy, but that's what we try to do. And if our best isn't good enough, then I'm a big boy and I understand the stakes. Then, if I'm not doing a good job, then I'd hope someone can do a better job than me. But relative to criticism, it helps when you don't really don't read much or listen much or hear much. I just want us to be a team that the city and state's proud of, and that more nights than not we have fun in the Target Center. And hopefully we do that, then we can finally have some success in the postseason. It's been forever, but this is a star fan base for a winner, and hopefully we can play some small smart in delivering that. And if not, then I get it. I get what this industry is about.
Rudy Gobert he's off to a great start. This feels like more the version, or even even better than the version I would have imagined you were getting. We didn't quite see that consistently last year. Maybe that was where some of the criticism came in, where it's like when Rudy is only pretty good or very good, he's not at that kind of elite all NBA level that maybe you expect that he was in Utah for so many years. Then it becomes, easier to kind of parse or criticize that trade. Is this version of Rudy Gobert that you're seeing this year, is he playing a lot closer or at that peak that you imagined when you made that trade?
Yeah, I mean, he's set, the bar is so high.
Yes.
Rudy had a good year.
Yes.
But it wasn't a good year by his standards. And he heard me say that numerous occasions. And that's what happens when you have this elite reputation based off all this really high level of productivity. I mean, when his career is over, there's going to be very few guys in the history of our league that had a bigger impact defensively. And he was coming from a team that was used to winning in the 50s every year. So while he had a good year last year, he'll be the first to tell you it wasn't up to his very, very high standards. So he challenged himself. What can I do better? How can I have more of an impact on this team, more of an impact on winning? And then, you got to give a guy a lot of credit, didn't point fingers. You won't find a more hardworking guy than Rudy. And then Coach Finch did such a wonderful job just getting to know these guys. I think, again, patience. We knew there was going to be clunky moments. I think Cat misses 50-plus games. Right. And we make a big in-season trade, getting rid of our point guard. So I think all those things kind of came into play as we see the Rudy that was a guy that was in contention or winning defensive player of the year. So it's been really cool to see a guy not point fingers or not pout, say, look, I got to be better. I know I can be better. And thus far, he's been fantastic.
You reference the trade from last year, the in-season trade where you trade D'Angelo Russell, you bring in Mike Conley Jr., you get Nickeil Alexander-Walker, who becomes a bigger rotation piece than I would have imagined, and has even started some games now with some of the injuries you've had this year. And you get a whole bunch of second-round picks. Trades benefit all teams. Everybody got something they wanted in that deal, but you have to feel really good about that in retrospect, especially Conley. Like, he's been better than I could have imagined. I think even Chris Finch recently said he's been better than he would have imagined. He's almost the MVP of this team to me. How do you view his contributions at this point in that trade in retrospect?
He's been fantastic. Everything as advertised and better. He's been seamlessly integrated into our team. He's certainly one of our leaders, and not just the player, but getting a first-class family like the Conleys and seeing them so quickly appreciate what this organization and what this state has to offer. It's exact type of guy we're looking to add, and we want to expose more guys like Mike to what we're trying to build here. So unbelievably fortunate to have him. I can't imagine our team without him. And seeing a guy that when we're always not the most coveted destination for a lot of these guys.
Sure,
they're not putting us 1, 2, 3. So a guy like Mike, we kind of tell him, give us a little bit of time. I think you're really going to like it here. And for that to come to fruition, again, both on and off the court, we can't control wins and losses, but I do think we can control how we treat these guys and how they feel like they're part of something. So the controllables with Mike would meant a lot to all of us. You have a guy like that who's won at the highest level, who's coming away from a Utah team that's won as many regular season games as anybody, and it was coveted by a ton of elite teams. And we got him here, and he's done fantastic, and he really likes it. He bought a house. His family's very happy. So these little micro wins that are controllable, we can't control, again, wins and losses, whether injuries or a shot goes in or out. But I think we can control how we act organizationally across the board, and Mike's completely reflective of real success in that regard.
You mentioned you can't imagine this team without him. I can't imagine this team without him. There will, at a certain point, I mean, he's one of the older players on the team, probably the oldest player on the team. There will come a point where he's gonna hang it up. But you also have like a lot of, I get so future focused. It's your guys are 15-4 right now, but I'm always like looking at like what's gonna happen next year. Look at all these salaries, things like that. Like, how do you manage kind of the now versus some of these kind of like looming decisions that could be out there when it comes to, salaries going up, contracts, things like that?
I think you have to obviously think both of those are important when you're going through any decision matrix. I also don't want us to be so forward facing that we're not enjoying this, what we think can be a special year. I mean, again, we're only 19 games in. We haven't won a playoff series in 2 decades, so we haven't accomplished much. But I think there's something special about this group, and a year's a year. So whether I've been guilty of in the past where so focused on the future, you're not enjoying that moment. I don't want to be. I don't want to be an organization that is dismissive of whole seasons, because as a fan growing up, I know how magical certain seasons could be. I know what it meant to be really excited to go to Memorial Stadium. When the '87 Orioles, when they missed out in the playoffs in the final game or two of the season. So I do think, again, in a weird parallel, I think patience, the lack of patience also runs hand in hand with this constant forward facing. We think we have a punch of shot to do something special. We know that there's going to be a lot of looming tough decisions. We have unbelievable supportive ownership that says, hey, if we're winning at the highest level, we know what these stakes might look like financially. And we're very fortunate to have ownership that's that committed to winning. And we know what those Final Four teams often looks like financially, right? If you kind of look at it, a lot of those teams are competing for sustained championship level success. It comes with a pretty hefty price tag. So we're firmly focused on the here and now. And we know we have some tough decisions to make in the offseason. But as we stand here in November, whatever it is, we couldn't be more proud of the group.
Does winning make those decisions easier or more complicated?
I think winning makes everything easier.
Okay.
It makes, I think, again, when you look at kind of your peer group, when you're at this, if we're trying to get at the big table, we're trying to get to be a Final Four playoff team. I think when you get to that point, it's oftentimes matchups, injuries, does a shot go in or shot go out? We're of the belief that if you can be a Final Four playoff team, a home court playoff team, that you're going to have a puncher's chance to make a run. So I think obviously you got to win to get there. Winning allows you to do more things, and it also allows players to be seen in a better light. So across the board, it's just the flexibility is increased exponentially when you're winning games.
I've referenced this a few times in things that I've written or even thought about, but I think it was even at your introductory news conference about 18 months ago or so. I'm sure it feels, I don't know if that feels longer or shorter, whatever it feels to you at this point, but you said something like success isn't always linear, something like that. And I think you've said it multiple times that I've heard you say that. Is that something you just kind of believe? Is that just kind of like part of your mindset? Or I've kind of wondered if you were almost like understanding that last year could be challenging, but that there could be better times ahead.
No, that was beyond basketball. It's in life. I don't think there's oftentimes straight paths to anything. If you look at our industry, it's 95% driven by health.
Yeah.
Another luck. I mean, the nature of our industry as it's constructed, if you're a really bad team, you get in a lottery. And if you win the lottery the right year, it can change the fortunes of your career. So I think there's something liberating understanding how much serendipity plays a role in our success, but it's not specific to basketball. I think if I was naive enough or arrogant enough to think that I could really control a ton relative to our team, I think someone should slap me. I don't think. I think work really hard. Be a good teammate. I think if we're going to preach the importance of being a good teammate, they have to see it. We have to be, we have to be connected. We have to be collaborative. And when the door opens after a ton of loud and vociferous debate, we make a decision. We move forward. I think players sense when there's not connectivity. Like I don't like the term front office and coaching staff. We're all part of basketball operations. There's a real cohesion here, not just on our side of the building, but with Ethan and the business side. Fantastic. We have great ownership. So, those things are controllable. If I've been part of games where we missed 16, 17 straight threes and we lost the game. they'll tell you there's a 0.9% chance that could happen. I'm ruining the numbers, but something.
I get it, yeah.
It's sports. That's what I think is the awesome part about it. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, look at the college football thing right here. If Alabama doesn't convert on 4th and 1,000, right, there's probably not a big debate. So that's why I think we have to put such an emphasis on those things, what we control, how we treat players, how we interact with the community, how we ensure that we have guys like Mike Connelly that feel like they're not just assets. Now, unfortunately, in professional sports, at times you're going to have to make tough decisions. You're going to have to make – I think the whole idea of training a human being is pretty yucky. But while these guys are here, we got to make sure that we're elite in everything we can control.
A couple more things for you, Tim. Appreciating your time today. You mentioned health. Obviously, that's a huge factor. Last year, it was a big part of your season when Cat was hurt for so much. You've navigated some minor injuries so far. You've had Jaden McDaniels out for a couple different stretches. Anthony Edwards obviously has been missed the last 2.5 games with that hip pointer. You've been able to win anyway in a lot of these cases. How do you feel about that, staying relatively healthy, but also kind of seeing some of the depth that you have, compensating for those inevitable minor injuries that come up during a season?
I think it's all the credit goes to Coach Finch and his staff for being creative, for putting guys in sometimes positions that probably wouldn't envision the offseason. I think we have quality depth. I don't think anybody on our roster is not capable of playing rotation minutes. Some of those guys, unfortunately, they won't find the minutes here because of their depth. But today's NBA, I think you need two things. And without either, I don't think you can win at a high level. You need depth and you need elite talent. And we're fortunate enough, I think, to have both. But that's Finchie is just a really good coach. I mean, when you coach in the G League and you can wake up in the morning with 3 starters and they all get caught up to the big team, you got to adjust. His ability to adjust on the fly with different lineups and putting guys in positions to succeed is special, and it's really speaks to how creative he is as a coach. You
didn't hire Chris Finch, but you've said nothing but, again, just now, nothing but great things about him, and he's obviously had success here with 2 straight trips to the playoffs, things like that. What about him made you appreciate it? I mean, sometimes when you get a new person at the top, they want their guy or something like that, or their own person in to be that head coach. But like I said, he's here already when you come in, and I think he might have even gotten a multi-year, maybe a 3-year extension right before you got here. What does that mean to you to have someone in here that you didn't necessarily hire initially, but that you trust with that head coaching spot?
He's been a friend for a long time. My brother worked in England with Nick Nurse, so I've known of Finch forever. And then we worked together in Denver, so there was a pre-existing relationship, knowing how good he is. Finch is one of my guys. So if I was hiring and Finch was on the street, he would be he would be right at the top of the list. I mean, it's seamless, but it's part of the appeal of this job, quite frankly. Was Finchie being here? I could have candid conversations with him prior to committing to understand what I was kind of getting into relative to the organization and the players and the city. So without Chris Finch, I wouldn't be here.
Wow. Okay. Does he have to be an extension candidate again soon? Or I'm not sure where he's at with that.
I don't know. We're not going to talk about.
Doesn't
coaches.
Matter. Okay. Doesn't matter.
Yeah, I hope Finch is here as long as he wants to be here. He's a fantastic coach. And I was lucky enough to have a long-term relationship with a dear friend in Denver. And I like to be around people for a long time. And Finchie's a special coach. Hopefully he's leading this team as long as he wants.
Awesome. Final thing for you, Tim. Appreciate it again, as usual. Thing that I've seen a lot on social media this year is, wow, that's a game the Wolves wouldn't have won last year before, something like that. You're winning games, whether it's kind of referencing what you said, the 6-10 against some of those lesser teams last year. You're finding a way to win those games. You're winning games in kind of those close moments. You're taking care of business, things like that. Do you buy into that? Are you seeing a lot of moments that are growth from like last year, even things that you would have witnessed from afar years past, where you're like, okay, this year's team is winning in a way that last year's team just wouldn't or couldn't have?
Yeah, I think there's a much more mature approach, especially when things aren't going our way. There's a couple things. Again, Finch is an elite coach. He's got a great staff. Continuity, I think another underrated portion or aspect of patience, if you're lucky enough to be able to employ it, is continuity. We return 9 over 10 same guys. A couple of our best players are kids. Anthony and Jaden are still kids, so there's an expected uptick. We knew Carl was going to be much better. We felt pretty confident we're going to see a re-energized Rudy. And I thought that's the last 15, right prior to Naz's injury, I thought we were playing really, really good basketball last year. So there was glimmers of hope about how we were growing and how we could continue to improve. And, you bring back 9 of the same 10, you have a great coach, you have health. And then it was a consistent talking point to our guys. We got to grow up. We can't be third in the league in techs. We can't not show up against these teams that are struggling. We can't have games like we did last year against Portland at home.
Yeah.
There's all these mini moments if we just played with a bit more maturity, and our season would have been drastically different. It's every game really does matter. If we close that Lakers game, our playoff matchup's different. If we win a couple of those games against the teams that were, not great teams last year, we're a home playoff team. So it was constant, it was consistent, it was a challenge, and all credit goes to Coach Finch, his staff, and our players. That it wasn't a mandate that went unheard, and I think you're seeing kind of the benefits of all those things in unison.
You feeling the energy in Target Center? I mean, it feels different this year, doesn't it?
Oh, it's great, man. We have great fans. We have really good fans. They haven't been treated to a bunch of success. Really knowledgeable fans. I think that part has been really cool to get to know. Some of our fans and how much they know about a team, and how much they get behind the defensive stops. It's awesome. It's our building's a really, really hard place to play, and it's getting harder each night. We've sold out every game. We have some huge games coming up, and our fans are great. And I feel fortunate to, be in the building and hear them, and I can't thank those guys enough.
Tim Connelly, appreciate it. I'm going to let you run. Congrats on the start to the season. Best of luck as the season unfolds. All right.
Thanks for having me, man.
I really appreciate Tim Connelly's time. I know he's busy. I know he's got a lot going on. We're right in the middle of the season. There is a game tonight, like I said, against San Antonio. So appreciate that time and those perspectives. Too early for a victory lap. I know this is a team that, even though they're 15-4 right now, but in the parlance of sports, they haven't won anything, right? They've won 15 games. They're the best record in the NBA, but they haven't won anything, as they say. And Tim Connelly knows that. He knows there's a long road ahead. He knows that they can't just say, hey, we are a good team right now. They got to keep proving it. I think he knows that, but I think he also has to be happy with what he sees right now, with what has been built right now. And like he said, there's decisions to make down the road, but they will cross those roads, cross those bridges when they get there, and winning takes care of a lot of the uncertainty as you go forward. Let us finish with the cooler. Vikings going to find out today who the quarterback is. I sure hope it's Josh Dobbs still. I just think that's their best chance for any kind of extra special success this season. I know he's got volatility in his game. I know he's been a turnover machine. I know that Bears game was awful. I think he needs one more chance at least. I feel like he needs the chance to show what he can do with Justin Jefferson in the lineup. I feel like he's your highest ceiling quarterback on the roster with Kirk Cousins injured. I just feel like instead of trying to go to Nick Mullins, trying to play it safe, you go back to Josh Dobbs. I hope Kevin O'Connell has the kind of wherewithal to make that decision, isn't locked up in his own system, isn't locked up in trying to prove that someone needs to run his offense. I hope that is the decision that gets made, but we will find out more on Wednesday. Access Vikings podcast coming later today, so listen for that. Until then, until tomorrow, I am Michael Rand, back at it again on Thursday.